All right, guys, we're going to talk about Europe's environmental issues. There are three environmental issues that we're going to talk about: acid rain in Germany, air pollution in the United Kingdom, and then we're going to talk about the nuclear disaster in Chernobyl, Ukraine. All right, so let's start off with acid rain in Germany. Basically, guys, over the last 30 years, officials in Germany have started noticing uh, massive decreases in their outputs, especially in their lumber production in the Black Forest. So they started looking at what was causing this issue, and they started seeing that there was a very high level of acid in the rain around Germany. Basically, guys, what they started seeing is the fact that it's contaminating soil, which then ends up killing trees. It actually eats off the surface of buildings and statues, and it's just overall harmful to wildlife. Okay, so let's look at what is acid rain. Here you can see a picture of a forest, and you can see it is definitely not a lush forest at all. So, what is acid rain? Basically, guys, it's when you have air pollution that rises up and mixes in with your clouds, where the raindrops or precipitation is formed. All right. So, basically, anytime that these harmful chemicals are released into the atmosphere, they can mix in with your rain. Now, it's not just rain, it's also snow, sleet, any type of precipitation. So if you look at this picture right here, you can see you've got your truck, you've got your factories and things over here that are emitting all of these nasty chemicals. Well, it goes up into rain clouds and mixes with the precipitation and comes down, and then you can see the effects on wildlife. Now, I need you to know that acid rain is it does actually have a very weak level of acid in it. So it's not going to burn your skin uh, when the rain touches you. But because the environment relies solely on rain, it's going to attack it and harm it more. Okay. You can see the difference in the branches here. You've got a very lush, green, healthy branch, whereas this branch over here has been contaminated with acid rain. So, what causes acid rain? Well, basically, for the over years and years and years, people did not realize how harmful exhaust fumes were, both from vehicles, but also from factories that were burning fossil fuels and things like that. And so, once they started looking into the causes, they pinpointed these two areas. Okay. So, basically, how does it impact Germany? Well, a lot of things can happen. First off, it impacts the trees just in the fact of it's not the water is not healthy, so it's not giving it a healthy source of water. But also, it's killing the nutrients in the soil. So obviously, it can't get the proper nutrients that it needs to grow strong. But also, these substances such as aluminum that gets put into the soil, um, it keeps these trees from actually growing in a healthy way. It's just like your body. If we don't put the right fuels in our bodies aren't going to grow strong. Okay. The Black Forest is almost nearly half gone because of acid rain. And this is a big deal because this is one of its major resources, which is timber. And so Germany's economy has really taken a hit because of acid rain. Okay. Definitely not trees you would want being used to make lumber and things for your home. Also, because of the acid rain getting into groundwater, such as streams and rivers and lakes, your fish and your other animals are also ingesting these acids, and again, are not good for the fish. Now, it also can cause issues with people who are eating these animals. Okay, there could be high levels of aluminum and things that our bodies cannot handle. So ultimately, different multiple aspects of our lives are impacted by acid rain. Okay. Another thing that started happening was the fact that these acids are actually eating away at historical landmarks and buildings. Um, this is, hundreds and hundreds of year old history that are just literally being eaten away. Okay. And this isn't a good thing. Okay. It definitely takes away on our historical values as well. So, how are they going to fix this? Well, Germany's government has finally gotten together over the years and they've started asking power plants to switch types of power that they're using. For example, instead of coal burning, they're using hydroelectricity or water power. They're also using wind turbines and solar power as well. And then, of course, to target the emissions from cars or the exhaust from cars, they are passing laws that will actually cut down on what car companies can allow as far as how much emissions can be let out. Now let's move on to air pollution in the United Kingdom. Basically, guys, you have very large industrialized cities across uh, Europe. Okay. Um, you have Paris, London, Berlin, Rome, Amsterdam. These are huge cities. And because they're huge cities, they tend to have a lot of factories. And a lot of factories mean a lot of people. A lot of people mean a lot of traffic. And when this happens, you end up with a lot of air pollution. And the United Kingdom has seen a huge increase in this issue. Okay. This is not a picture of fog. This is actually a picture of the air quality, which is very poor in London. So basically, guys, they started using the word smog around 1905. And it literally is in the name. It's a thick fog, but it's also mixed with smoke. And basically, what ends up happening is when the sunlight hits these gases, it mixes with these smoke particles and it makes this just smog, this really thick uh, cloud in the air, and it makes it very dense. It makes it very hard to see, but it also makes it very hard to breathe. Okay, just another example, another picture of smog. So basically, guys, a lot of this was used to be caused by uh, factories that were burning coal. All right. Um, and so what happens is these nasty chemicals and fumes are in the air. And so the quality begins to really get bad. Okay. Really starts to get to a point to where it's very unhealthy to be outside. Okay. Also, because there are so many people in these cities, the amount of cars that are being used, trucks to uh, carry around goods and things like that, the exhaust are also emitting very toxic fumes. Okay, carbon monoxide, nitrous oxides, and they actually don't just disappear. They stay very close to the ground, which is right where people are living and breathing. So, what kind of effects are coming out of this air pollution? Well, a lot of asthma and a lot of pneumonia are being found in these areas. It's coming into the lungs and it's burning those, it's burning the nose, the eyes. And ultimately, guys, if people can't breathe, it's endangering their lives. You're also having a lot of children who are born with breathing issues. You also have the elderly who truly can't be outside for long periods of time because the air is so hazardous. Okay. And it's also harmful to plant life. Okay. Plants need good air to be able to grow. And if they can't get the proper amount of oxygen and things that they need, they can't grow, just like our bodies. If the vegetation can't grow, crops will die. And then in the end, it ends up impacting the area's economies because they can't sell what they can't grow. So what have they started doing? They started in the 50s putting in what were called smokeless zones. And basically, in these areas, the factories and things, they could only use smokeless fuels. They've also started using electricity a lot more. Um, laws have also started being passed that require car manufacturers to build cars that are going to produce less exhaust. And another thing, because they are in these big major cities, they're asking people to actually walk more, use public transportation, and cut down on the driving. Okay. Now, in Western Europe, which is your areas like France and Germany, the United Kingdom, they are really trying to do their part to uh, keep a keep the air pollution really low, and simply because they have a lot of money. These countries are a lot uh, more wealthy than your Eastern European nations. Once you start getting over towards the Ukraine and Russia, you're going to see that these nations are relatively poor compared to your France, Spain, Germany, that sort of thing. And they have less money. Because they have less money, they have less technology. So they cannot research new ways. So these Eastern European cities are still in a very harmful level when it comes to air pollution. The European Union, which is a group of countries around Europe, have also come together trying to attack the air pollution issue. One of the things that they've been doing is restricting toxic waste. They've been trying to pass different policies that will keep the emissions of factories and cars down to a very bare minimum in order to keep acid rain away and to keep that air pollution gone so we can improve their air quality. Last but certainly not least, we have the nuclear disaster in Chernobyl, Ukraine. Okay. Basically, guys, if you look right here, you will see all of these areas in green. Um, these green areas were nuclear reactors. In the 80s, there was a big push to be able to produce a lot of power. And so, one of the things that they were able to do is they were able to use nuclear power. Okay. So, basically, from the 20s up until the 90s, because the Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, and we'll talk more about the Soviet Union later, but just know this was a very communistic country at the time. Uh, they had a lot of agricultural success, they had a lot of farmland, but they were also looking for ways to find cheaper energy. Okay. It was also, they were trying to find cleaner energies. So they came up with this idea to use nuclear power. Now, nuclear power is great until it's not. Um, Basically, most of the nuclear power plants around Europe and around the world had very strict regulations. The Ukraine, however, did not. And it was simply because they were a part of this Soviet Union that they were trying to become a very large world power. And so they were trying to do all of this without worrying too much about consequences. Well, Chernobyl was actually a big city growing in Ukraine. And so they made this power plant there. Um, they also at Chernobyl used to not only produce nuclear power for power, but they also were creating nuclear weapons. Okay. Well, in 1986, the Soviet Union was creating 10% of the world's nuclear power. Now that's a lot, guys. That's a huge amount. Doesn't sound like it, but it is. In the early hours of April 26, 1986, around 1 in the morning, one of the reactors actually exploded. Now, when this exploded, this released amazingly huge amounts of deadly radioactive nuclear material into the atmosphere. Now, you could actually see the reactor from miles and miles away. And it was actually a blue light emitting from this reactor. What they didn't realize was the dangerous material that was seeping out of it that they could not see. Okay. So before, this is what the reactor looked like. This is what it looked like after. And this was some time after, because all of that area right in there, guys, was still nuclear reactive. It was very, very dangerous. So basically, guys, because the Soviet Union was communistic and they did not want anybody to know what was going on, they never made any mention of the explosion. Um, Basically, guys, you're looking at about 36 hours that people in the direct vicinity of this reactor, they were being uh, they were being introduced to radioactive material. It was You had people that were getting sick from this radioactive material. It was almost like a cancer, a fast eating cancer on these people who were right around the reactor site. So it was not a good thing. It was very, very dangerous. It wasn't until after 36 hours of this exposure that people were finally being told to leave Chernobyl, to actually pack their bags and leave. Guys, they actually put around the reactor zone an 18-mile evacuation zone. Doesn't sound like much, but it is a huge area. Now, what you also don't realize was that um, all of this radioactivity that was hurled into the sky, the wind starts blowing it, and it starts reaching other countries. Um, Basically, your Belarus, Russia, Poland, and other countries in that vicinity were experiencing very high levels of radioactivity because of the material that was being blown around. Okay, if you have the site here, all of this in brown felt the react felt the reaction because of the wind that was blowing the material around. Basically, guys, the first emergency workers that were on site, they started to die very quickly in that first month. The radiation literally burned their body from the inside out. Okay, all of the animals in the area, they also died. The In the rivers coming out of Chernobyl, all of the fish, all of the water, everything was very unsafe. You could not eat it, you could not drink it. Ultimately, guys, millions of acres of farmland was poisoned. Now, obviously, this is going to hurt all of those countries because now they can't produce anything to uh, support their economy. These were some of the radiation suits that were worn by the workers. As you can tell, a lot of it's not going to protect them. Okay. Basically, guys, uh, when you were exposed to high levels of radiation, your health problems skyrocket. You begin coming down with different types of cancers, autoimmune disorders, which means that your immune system doesn't work. If ladies were pregnant at the time, a lot of their children were born with birth defects, and then there's just a list that just keeps going on. Okay, basically, guys, today. It did continue to produce electricity for 14 years after the fact. But finally, they were, enough was enough and they finally closed it. Basically, guys, this is still to this day one of the most radioactive spots on Earth. There is an 18-mile exclusion zone around Chernobyl, meaning you are not allowed to go in there without special permission. Okay. It is an absolute ghost town today. No one is allowed in. Um, Basically, guys, Ukraine has finally opened up this area so you could actually see the firsthand effects of the disaster. They have started trying to repopulate the forests around Chernobyl, bringing in new wildlife and things like that. But ultimately, guys, humans are not able to live in Chernobyl for another 20,000 years because the radiation levels are so intense. Okay. These are just some pictures to show you. It's just a ghost town. It's very eerie, if you ask me. It's just stuck in 1986. All right. All right, guys, go ahead and get your charts completed, and then we will be working on a couple of other activities as we go along.